So we are live. So hello everyone, welcome back to Geeks for Geeks. My name is Muskan Agarwal, and today we are here with yet another webinar. And this is a really interesting topic, which is a buzz around around various social media platforms, and you must have seen various people telling about their opinions on the same. So here we are going to discuss, is CP absolutely necessary for SD roles, or how much CP is important, or is it even important? So I have a lot of questions in mind, and I'm sure that you guys also will be having a lot of questions. So this webinar is going to be really exciting one. So stay tuned till the end. And we have Soham with us today, who is going to answer all these questions. So I'll add him to the stream really quickly, but if I'm perfectly visible and audible, so just give me a thumbs up in the comment section if I'm perfectly visible and audible, and there are no technical glitches. Just give me a thumbs up. I am looking at the comment section right now. Yes. Also, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put down it in the comment section, and we will definitely try to take them during the webinar or during the end of the webinar. So yes, please put them all in the comment section. Okay, thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, Shahid, for acknowledging. Yes. Just waiting for few more people to join for another 1 minute maybe, and then I'll quickly add my guest to the stream. Even I am really excited for the webinar. Okay, I can see a lot of thumbs up. Okay. I think we are good to go. I'll add him to the stream. Hi Soham, how are you doing?
Hey, Muskan, thanks for adding me. I'm doing good. What about you?
I'm doing good as well. So, are you excited about the webinar? Are you excited to answer the questions? That a lot of people, I can already see, a lot of people, 60 people are already in the live session. So,
Yeah.
are you excited for this webinar?
Definitely, this is one of the most debated topics. So yeah, definitely, I'll again my answers might not be absolute. It might be from my perspective, but
Yes.
yeah, I'll again whatever I have experience with, I'll be sharing those only. No lies and these things. Yeah,
Yes.
but yeah, we'll see.
So, I am very excited to ask all the questions. But before that, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself so that the audience can connect with you better and know you better?
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Soham Mukherjee. I am currently working as a SDE2 at Indeed. Before that, I was working with Google, and before that, I was working with Coordination. So, I have graduated in 2020, and I have around 2 years of experience. Apart from software engineering, I'm also an educator. So I currently am an educator for Geeks. I come live every Sunday to discuss the interview series, the interview series that you have the solutions for that, and so basically, I'm a part-time educator, full-time software engineer, and uh, again, I have some opinions about competitive programming and DSA that I'll be sharing in this webinar. So I'm happy to have you all here.
Yeah, that is really great. And I think because you have experience in both the fields, right? Being an SD, you have experience there as well. And being an educator, you have experience from this side as well. So I think you're the perfect person to answer the questions. Right.
I hope so.
Yes, let's hope so. So my first question would be, why do you think there is so much buzz around CP and dev? Is it even necessary to, like, there is so much buzz around CP and dev? So why is it there?
Uh, so basically, it depends. It depends on the experience of people, right? So there are interviews which are kind of related to, when you do a lot of development. It's generally true for startups that what they want you to do. Whenever you enter them, whenever you join them, they want you to start building quickly, right? So they see your development experience, like do you know certain languages, do you know certain frameworks. They
Correct.
see those things, and based on that they hire you, because they don't have that like they won't give you that much time to learn it from scratch. And then because again learning will take some time, right? Maybe a month or 15 days approximately. So they want you to start working from day one. That's why they hire with respect to that. And yeah, like there are other big companies as well that do look into your dev profile and these things. On the other hand, there are companies that completely rely on, I would not say competitive programming, but they give data structures and algorithm problems which you have to solve in a given amount of time. Again, like that is called competitive programming. But yeah, like we have two terminologies here, right? Cp and Dsa. I myself don't understand the difference. But yeah, like so that's why some people think Cp is important, right? So again, like it depends on the like interview experiences they had, or the experiences they bring to the table. Based on that, they like fight between Cp versus dev.
Correct. Correct. Actually, according to my opinion, both the things are important at
Yeah,
respective times. So yes.
yeah. So
Uh,
definitely, yeah.
al-
So
Also, yeah, yeah, continue.
no, I said yeah, like we'll definitely. I think we have a lot of questions that will definitely unravel the truth behind like what happens exactly. Uh, so yeah, like definitely we'll discuss these things in details.
Correct. Also, do you think that CP is absolutely mandatory to get into SD role? Suppose I am someone who
Right,
has never done CP or who has never solved even a single question in CodeChef. So
right.
my chances of getting into some good company, is it equivalent to someone who is a good, very good competitive programmer?
uh, I would say not equivalent, right? But yeah, definitely it's not that you have to do CP to get a job, right? So again, like let's understand in this way. So this is something that a friend of mine, and he's a very popular YouTuber and a personality as well, like Raj Vikramaditya or Striver. He once said in one of his videos that like there was this fight going on between CP and Dev, right? So he gave this example which I really liked, and I would like to quote that back. So just assume that you are playing cricket, right? Or there's a place where there's a cricket competition being organized. Now there are three under 19 players, and rest are like gully cricket players, right? And they're definitely like the gully cricket players are also very good, but who is more likely to outperform? It's the under 19 players, right? Because they have played at a national level, or they have played at international levels, right? So that brings us to competitive programming. Like what exactly happens in an interview? You have 90 minutes or you have 60 minutes. You have to solve 2 3 questions in that time, and you have to like definitely not very difficult questions like competitive programming. Like that's how people differentiate between competitive programming and DSA. That competitive programming is the harder version of DSA, like solving DSA questions. Like you
Right.
have to learn about the advanced data structures algorithms. Those are not required in interview. But again, like if you think about it, it's more or less similar. Like you have a given like with respect to what the meaning of competitive programming is, it's basically a sport where you have to solve a few questions in a given amount of time. And that's exactly what happens in interviews, right? You will be given questions and you have to solve it within a given amount of time. So yeah, like definitely if you are good with competitive programming, it's more likely that you will be able to solve these questions much faster, in a much better and efficient way than a person who has not done competitive programming at all. But it doesn't
Correct.
mean that that's the absolute thing, right? So like there are many people, I have seen many people who are not who have never done CP, but they are in big tech companies as well. And that's because the questions are not very hard if you have your basics clear, right? That will definitely like it all boils down to whether you're able to solve the question or you are not able to solve the question.
Correct. I think that is a really good way to put it. And the example that even I read it on Striver's LinkedIn page. So, yes, that is a very good example. And it is a really good way to put it out. I mean, it will definitely help. It is not like if you're doing CP, it will not help you clear the interviews.
Yeah,
Right. Yes. So my next question was supposed to be how can CP help students clear the interview? I think you've already answered it. You stated few points, but if you have any other points, like if you have seen some examples in which students who are good at CP, they cleared some interviews or where they use their CP skills to clear some particular question.
right. I'll give my example itself. Sometime back I was interviewing for Uber, and
Hmm.
so I got a question that was a DSU based question, right, in the interview. And thing is, I have never seen similar DSU questions before. Like, it was completely new, and I never like solved a similar DS. Like, generally what happens in interviews is you already have solved enough problems, and you get some problem, you try to map it to some existing problem that you've solved, or you try to break it down to some problem that you know you can solve, and you take it from there. But this question was kind of very different. I had never solved a similar question, right? So and thing being that I have solved a lot of DSC questions before, so definitely it was something new that I've seen. But Yeah, like I was able to solve it as well. The reason being, whenever the question was given out to me, the first thing that I realized immediately was that it's a DSU question. Because again, that there something called instinct works or comes into play. Like, if you have done a lot of competitive programming, you
Hmm.
generally have these instincts that whenever you see a problem, you know that what might be a way you can take. And yeah, it might not work out, then you try a different approach or something, but initially you get some idea, right, about how to approach the problem. So
Right.
that came into picture. I immediately realized it was a DSU question. Then the task became much simpler. Like, I had to just break down the problem into something that fits the needs of a DSU, and then solve it using just write the code for DSU, right? And I was able to do that as well. So I definitely believe that again, like, it's from me, my perspective, right? But I feel that if I had not done DSU, like if I had not done competitive programming that time, if I was not that confident, then
Right.
things would have been different, because I would have been freaked out by the question. Rather, I was not freaked out but I immediately realized that, hey, we can take this approach.
Correct, correct. I think, as you mentioned, that within that time span you have to you have to
Yeah,
state out the answer in an interview. So this is where CP helps the students, because there you have some particular timestamps. Like, suppose in 1 hour you have to solve two questions. So
right,
similar case is there in an interview, right? So I think
right.
that
I would
is,
like to add one more point. Sorry about cutting you off.
no,
So
no.
So one more thing that's important to understand is, in an interview, it's not about just solving the question, right? The major challenge is you have to explain your solution. Like, when you're thinking, you have to explain your thought process, so the interviewer is always on the same page. And also you have to walk him through some samples and these things. These are some things that are not required in a competitive programming competition. You just think yourself, you just write some things in your paper, scramble some things, and you just write the code after that, and it works, right? But here it's much difficult, because you are having to explain someone parallelly. So again, like, if you take a lot of time thinking about the solution or coming up with the solution, or at least getting a direction, that is also bad, because again, you will not be able to complete within time.
Right. I was reading a LinkedIn post on the same thing what you said, that these days a lot of students are able to solve the question, but are not able to communicate like how they are solving, and sometimes get confused in their own answer, like whatever they're
Right.
telling. So as you mentioned, that explaining to the interviewer is also very important.
Right.
Correct. Yes. Also, talking about problem solving skills. So every time we say that, more than anything, problem solving skills are important. So how has, if you can give some examples that, some problem solving skills that you learned while doing DSA or competitive programming helped you in SD roles?
Sure. So, again, I have given over maybe 50 or more interviews, and I've cracked a lot of companies as well. I have not been able to crack a lot of companies as well, so that's also there. But yeah, like, definitely, I believe that my problem solving skills help me always. I'll give you a number of reasons. Firstly, as I had done, like, let's come back to internship. Like, when I got my first internship at D Shaw, or when I got my first job at Code Nation, let's come into these parts. So uh, I didn't had to explicitly prepare for the interviews, like, with respect to DSA, right? While my friends were all mugging up Geeks for Geeks, Lead Code, and these things, I was mostly doing code forces problems, because again, I used to do competitive programming. I was just focusing on increasing my ratings and these things, right? So one thing that has helped me is that right till today I don't have to prepare a lot explicitly for cracking interviews, right? Because again, like most of I'm also like in the educational field, that also helps me because I already solve a lot of problems when I come live and these things. But apart from that, because of my past experience as well, I have that confidence that I can solve problems, and I have that knowledge as well, that I can solve a few questions, right? That will be given. I might not be able to, but I have that confidence. So that saves my time firstly, right? Because I can focus on other things. Like recently I cracked interviews, right? I cracked Indeed and these things, so I could have focused on system design. I focused on low level design, design patterns and these things, right? So that's one. Second is like you don't so it is not always true. Like many people say that you can just grind lead code and you will get a SDE job, right? That's not always true. It depends on your interviewer, like what question your interviewer is asking, right? To be honest, I have not been very lucky enough that I have, like in a single round I never got all the questions that are lead code questions that I have solved. In some cases, like let's say I'm asked three questions, out of them one question has been is a lead code problem that was familiar with, that I already knew how to solve, but not always, right? So again, like there are people who are lucky enough, they get all the questions common from lead code, and they say people that, hey, you just have to solve lead code, you just have to grind lead code.
Right.
That's not the case. It depends on your interviewer, like what interview. If you're lucky, your interviewer will just take up some question, or if the interviewer is lazy, he will just take up some lead code question and give it to you. But if the interviewer is good, if the interviewer does some pre-work, and if the interviewer is, the worst part is if the interviewer is a competitive programmer, he will definitely not give you a lead code question, right? So if I
Right.
am taking interviews, I'll never give a lead code question. I'll try to frame up something like that's something like that's not there in lead code at least, or that's like not straightforward lead code question. So yeah, like that's a so in those cases, the problem here is you do not know the solution to the problem, you do not know how to solve the problem. So there
Right.
you have to break down the problem to something that you have already solved, or something that you know you can solve, right? And that is where your problem solving skills come into picture. So let's take an example here: dynamic programming. It is one of the most favorite question, like favorite topics for interviewers, and it is one of the most difficult questions as well. Like you get very difficult questions from dynamic programming, right? So again, like in dynamic programming, there is no rule of thumb that you can follow to solve a question. So it comes with practice. Like more problems you've solved, the more variance you have seen, the better you get at that, right? You can quickly observe those patterns and understand what will be the states, what will be the transition, and these things. So it comes with practice. So definitely, like there also, your how much problem you have solved, what is your problem solving skills, that will help you get a job. Okay, I think I have understood the question wrong. So you said in real life, I believe. Right now I'm
Real
seeing
life.
that.
Yes,
Okay,
but I
so
think the facts that you mentioned are also very relevant. Like,
right,
this is
right.
how problem solving skills actually help us. So I think that was also very
Right.
helpful.
So
Yeah.
I'll give a real example as well. That okay. So many people say that, hey, competitive programming just stays with you, or problem solving just stays with you as long as you're giving interviews, and not after that, right? And that's a sort of true, right? So basically, when you write code, like when you are writing code for a big organization, you generally will not use anything hardcore. Like let's say you want to find the sum of a range, right? You will not just go and code out a segment tree, something like that. You will prefer a n square solution over the n log n solution, right? And that's because the readability and these things. You also have to understand the constraints with which the code will work. Like, is it like will it actually n will n ever be a million thing, right? So those constraints also come into picture, and based on that you create your solution, right? You have to take care of readability, you have to take care of understandability, scalability, all these things. So one example, but that's not always true, right? You will often get problems. Firstly, what competitive programming I believe helps you with is thinking about corner cases, right? So whenever
Hmm.
you're doing competitive programming, you get stuck with a case like, let's say n equals to 0. You don't know, like you might not have handled that, and it will give you an error, right? So you kind of get crafty with these corner cases, and these actually help you a lot in your real life. example being, so let's say there were many times when we faced problems like something related to race conditions and these things, right? Or like we're writing to the cache, but if the cache is in memory cache, so it will not work. What Because again, like there are multiple servers, that will not work in that case. So again, like these crafty little things, they come into your like whenever you have done competitive programming, you are kind of, you tend to think about the corner cases, like what might go wrong, right? What
Right.
are the queries that might fail? Like you have some database queries, what are the queries that might fail this thing, right? So with respect to those, you kind of get a bit you kind of already think about it before it happens. So you, maybe you tackle it or you mark it as a to do, that I'll tackle it later, I don't have a solution right now. So kind of, like whenever you face this issue, you exactly know what went wrong, right?
Right.
The second being, in many cases you actually have to use real data structures and algorithms. So during my internship at Disha, I was asked to build a application dependency visualizer in-house. Like it would be a in-house tool that would visualize, like there are multiple applications and they have dependencies, right? So for example, there's an application that depends on the LDAP. The LDAP contains the usernames of all the users, and it will draw that information in their profile. In the second application, it would draw that information from the LDAP, and it would display their profile and these things, right? Yeah, like kind of like that. Or there might be databases on which this application also depends, right? So there are in that case, in that while building that, initially, like I thought that it would just be simple queries that I have to write, and I was using a graph database, Neo4j. So but again, like it turned out to be completely different, because there was some monitoring and stuff that I had to do, and for that I had to propagate state changes and these things. Eventually I ended up implementing something called topological sorting and these things, right, which are like graph
Right.
algorithms. So again, like if I didn't have that idea about, like I already did competitive programming, so I had an idea about topological sorting or directed acyclic graphs and these things. But if I didn't, then it would have been a problem for me. Like I wouldn't have been able to like complete the work properly.
Right. I think this is the perfect example to the people who ask like like so many years, but we have never implemented trees or some particular data
Right.
structure in the role. I think this is the perfect example that maybe not every day, but at some point you will definitely implement the problem solving skills that you learned while doing DSA or competitive
Right.
programming. Correct.
Yeah, like it's not necessary that you will get to implement it, but again, like if you're working at something where it's needed, the point being that you can at least get it done, right? You don't have to
Correct.
like again explore what is the best solution out there.
Correct. Correct. And sometimes we don't even realize that, we are implementing our problem solving skills in real time, but we actually, because we have practiced so many questions and, practice CP or DSA, we actually have gained that problem solving ability in ourselves. So,
Right.
yes. Right. So, once again, I can see a lot of questions. So, we can take few of the questions and then I'll continue with my question that I have.
Sure.
Okay, so there's a question that is DSA used in real-time job. I think we just answered it. Um, okay. Mm. So there's a lot of questions around the language preference. So because a lot of freshers I've seen struggle like what language to choose. So you have any suggestions for them?
uh, yeah, like it's a difficult thing. I would say that choose one of C++ or Java, like whichever you're comfortable with, because other languages might actually cause some problem. Like the advantages with C++ and Java is the rich HTL, or the standard template library, or the collections that you get with Java, right?
Right.
That's very rich. That definitely helps you solve a lot of problems. Definitely it's there with Python as well, but with Python the problem is the runtime, the execution time is a lot, so sometimes it actually times out and these things. So that's a problem. Other But yeah, like for other languages you don't have support for all these data structures and inbuilt data structures, right? So definitely go with Java or Python, sorry, Java or C++, whichever you are comfortable with.
Right. Correct. Okay. So, some of the people say that why choose between CP or Dev or DSA? Why not do everything? But as a college student, it is very difficult for us to manage time. So, what are your suggestions? Like, how should we divide our time, or how much time should we give to each thing?
Right. CP and DSA are kind of the same thing, right? So you have to do one. Now it boils down to CP, like CP and development, I would say. Right. So how to manage time? It depends on you, like how much time you are able to give. Like for example, I didn't go to college. I went to college, but I didn't have a attendance pressure and these things. So I never like kind of I had attendance of 1 day or 2 day semester. So yeah, like I was a bit fortunate in that, but you might have to go to college, you might have to spend 7 8 hours there, right? So it will be different for you. It depends on how much time you can give, but you have to like think about it in a judicious way. So maybe like let's say you are in your first year, right? So you can actually start exploring a bit of CP, right? And parallelly, you can do a bit of development as well. Like you can give more time to development, a bit of time to CP, or maybe if you want to do well in CP, you can just initially start doing only CP and then get better at it. And after that, once you're good at CP, you can like reduce the amount of time you're spending because again, like you don't have to learn after a certain period of time, right? You just have to solve problems and participate in contests. So in that time you can reduce your time how much you give towards CP and start with your development work, start contributing in open source and these things, right? So it kind of depends on how you can well you can manage. I would say everything is important, but you have to prioritize things. Like you have to understand what is more important. Is CP more important? Is dev more important? Like first of all, identify a target. Like what are the companies, list of companies you want to crack, right?
Hmm.
Or what is the target? Like you want to reach ICBC, your target is winning a ICBC medal, go to world finals, or your target is just to crack interviews. Okay, your target is just to crack interviews. So like both will be different, right? If you want to go to world finals, you have to give your entire time into CP only, because it will be difficult. But let's see,
Correct.
it's only cracking good companies, right? Now list down the companies that you want to crack, right? So if you see that, hey, I want to crack just Fang, right? I'm just interested in Fang, or I'm just interested in top product based companies. So in that case, they mostly ask you CP or DSA. They generally don't care about how much development profile you have. So I'm not saying do not do development, definitely do some development, but yeah, like give more time to CP, get better at problem solving, and then switch into development. Let's say you want to crack, like you want to be good at development, you want to be a good software engineer, right? And
Correct.
overall, right? So in that case, maybe you can give or you want to crack some startups as well, or you want to be ready for any company. So in that case, maybe give a bit of time to CP. Like once you get better at CP, like in your first year, maybe you're getting better at CP, then reduce the time from second year and start with a bit of development as well. Learn things and then start contributing to open source projects, or maybe build your own products and these things.
Correct. I think it does not have a right or a wrong answer. Like it will vary from each individual to individual, as you mentioned. Right.
Right. Again, like how much time you can give, right? Like if someone can give 8 hours a day, that's a different thing. If someone can give 5 hours a day or 3 hours a day, that will be completely different for them.
Different. Right. Depends on what goals you have eventually, as you mentioned.
And yes, definitely.
Correct. Okay. Okay. So there's a question from Harsh. What is the difference between CP and DSA?
uh, I am myself confused between what people refer to as CP versus DSA, but I feel like what I've heard people like complaining about, like from what I have heard, is CP is basically what they mention is able to solve any problem, like learning all the complicated data structures and algorithms as well. For example, segment trees, trips, fast Fourier, FFT, NFT, and these things, right? So sorry, NTT and not NFT, NTT. That's basically CP. Like you will be learning everything that's needed. You will be solving contests regularly. Again, like that's also DSA. You're learning, eventually you're learning data structures and algorithms. But people refer to DSA as the amount of data structures algorithms needed to crack interviews. Right, and in interviews you will not be needing these. Maybe you might need segment tree, but you would not need square root decomposition or trips and these things, right? So in
Correct.
that like you just might need graphs, trees. In trees also you might need just binary trees, DSUs, DP, and these things. So like I think that's the difference. But again, like I myself don't understand it well.
Yeah. I mean, DSA is used to do CP, I think. Like, how are these two different? So,
Yeah, right. So again, like people refer to it as CP versus DSA, like that something that's needed to crack interviews versus something that is like a contest, like it's a sport that you are playing.
Correct, correct. Okay, many people without even having account. Okay, so Akash is saying that many people who don't even have account on CoachChef or Coach Forces are there in good product-based companies. As you mentioned, that it is not
Yeah,
mandatory, right?
no,
So
definitely
yes,
it's not mandatory, right? So it depends on if you're able to solve the question in the interviews. Luck is a very big factor, right? So let's say
yeah,
you can always rely on your luck. You can go without any preparation as well, and you might crack the interviews. So that also
correct.
happens with many people.
Like I have heard one of my friend, just solve one lead code question just like 10 to 15 minutes before the interview, and surprisingly, that question was only asked like, what are the probability? So
Yeah.
anything can happen in an interview. You cannot predict. Like CP is kind of applying DSA, I guess. I think yeah, that is correct. Okay. Okay, guys, please keep the questions related to CP and Dev. Like, I can see a lot of questions for other topics. We will try to cover them in some other webinar which is related to those topics. But in this webinar, let's discuss questions around CP and DSA or Dev. Any idea how to apply off? Okay, Java or C++? Like Anushka is asking, which one is necessary for DSA?
Whichever you feel should be easier. Again, like if you don't know any language, I would suggest go with C++.
Hmm.
It's a bit easier to understand and start with. But if you are from a Java background, or if you have some experience with Java, like uh, in many schools in class 10 they teach Java, right? Class 10 or 10 or 12. So like you can go with Java, right? So if you know about C++ or C, or if you don't know about anything, go with C++. Otherwise, go with Java. Like if you have some Java experience.
Okay. So there's this one question that what should be the timeline of CP preparation? I think like CP is never ending, right? You can just keep on solving
Yep.
questions and there shouldn't be any timeline. What are your views on this?
Right. Exactly. So I'm not sure what your aim is, right? Again, it depends on what you want to achieve. If you want to become a competitive programmer, if you want to become a good competitive programmer, if you want to achieve 7 stars or reach international grandmaster, or compete in the ICPC World Finals, again, like it depends on how much effort you are putting as well. Like you can, the college to most of the college students are able to achieve it in 4 years only, right? Many people start from college itself. So
Right,
again, like it depends on what your aim is. If you want to beat the top competitive programmers like Tourist or Edicto, then you have to give a bit more time maybe. Or if you are brilliant enough, you can get it done in a smaller amount of time as well. But yeah,
right,
like if your target is cracking companies or cracking interviews, then again, like how much effort you are putting in, right?
right,
If you are solving a lot of questions, if you're good with competitive programming, if you're comfortable with problem solving, then maybe you are ready, right? You are most likely to be ready for interviews. But again, like that
right,
doesn't mean you will be able to crack every company. So again, like there's no end to preparation, and there's no end to these things. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on how good you are at problem solving, how many questions you have solved, how is your luck when you're giving the interviews, how are the questions, how is the interviewer, how are the questions asked. All these
right.
factors are coming to picture.
Right. Cracking an interview has like not one factor as you mentioned. Like it comes with
Right.
10 different factors and yes. Also, talking about ratings, do you think ratings really help when resume shortlisting is happening or when someone is going through your resume? Do you think that helps?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll actually tell a funny experience. So I was interviewing for a Japanese company. It's a
Mhm.
robotics company, right? They just shortlisted me because of my C profile ratings. Right, I was a 6 star at Code Chef, so they just shortlisted me for that. And not only that, like there was one interview which I completely blew up because I was asked some questions about smart pointers, and I didn't know what smart pointers that time. So kind of they made me derive what a smart pointer is, but again, like I didn't have the knowledge. And as it's a robotics company, they completely work with C++, right? So it was kind, I completely blew up that interview, but still I got shortlisted. They took another interview. They were like, they did also, I was also not interested in joining them, but they were not interested in leaving me. They wanted to roll out an offer to me. So they kind of like held me in. They interviewed me more, told me to give one more round. I gave that, it went good. So after that, they shortlisted me. They gave me the offer. So kind of like it definitely depends, and I have received a lot. So right now what happens, right now I also have a bit of experience, so that's why recruiters reach out to me. But even
Yeah.
like when I didn't have a lot of experience, when I was like graduating, so I held around four offers in my hand, right? With two international offers and two offers from India. But due to COVID, I was not able to move. So that was another like a reason. That's the reason why I'm here. Um, but yeah, like most of the recruiters reached out to me. I didn't apply to a lot of places. In fact, I interviewed with Google that time as well, although I was not able to clear the interview. But like they reached out to me because of my kickstart performance, right? So I had a rank within top 100 international rank, so they reached out to me because of that. And there are many other companies. Media.net reached out to me. Then Shopee Singapore, I got an offer from. They also reached out to me, their recruiter. And all of these because of my CP profile. Like I had written my ratings and these things in my LinkedIn profile, so they reached out to me because of that.
Okay, that is really great. I think these are some of the perfect examples, like how CP is actually getting, help you get an SD role, or so many recruiters reached out to you. So yes, okay. Then there's a question by Harsh that are there any strategies or approach that you follow when you are solving any DSA question or any CP question?
uh, So the first strategy is I try to think about what I should be using for solving this question, right? Like again, like there are a lot of tools that you have. You have a lot of data structures. You have a lot of algorithms. What finding the perfect data structure algorithm for a problem, that's kind of like what problem solving helps you with. Again, like
Yeah.
that comes with solving a lot of problems because you have seen a lot of patterns, and eventually the questions are repeating patterns, right? Like it's not that a question is kind of like on itself, like it's a completely new question or something. It's something that is based out of something that you've already solved, or you might not have solved. In that case, you might not be able to solve it within the interview timeline, right, or within a short time. So yeah, like first thing is I observe for patterns. I try to understand what is the thing I should use for this question, and that's the thing that I do immediately, right? When I get the question, I immediately think that I should be taking this approach. So for example, let's say I am asked to I'm given some question like you have to count the minimum number of ways and these things. Generally I think of, hey, this might be a DP problem because I have to count the number of ways, right? Or then I start thinking about what are the states, right? So it's kind of an incremental approach. Once you get the have an understanding about what you might need to do, then you take an step towards that approach and identify the next steps, right? Like for a DP, you will identify the states and the transition. For a graph problem, you will identify how to what you want to use, what is the algorithm that you want to use for solving this question, and something like that, right? So that's generally the pattern I follow.
Yes. I think we have taken all the relevant questions from the comment section. So, last question from my end would be, so if you have any tips for future engineers who are, having their SD interviews lined up, so if you have any tips for them.
uh, so I would say yeah, like it depends on how much time that you have. Like if you have 1 month or something, I would suggest you definitely do lead code and geeks for geeks problem set that you have for interviews, right? That will again like that's a last minute preparation, and these things should be used as a last month or last 2 months preparation where you want to do some company specific questions like what has been asked already. Secondly, go through the interview experiences that are available, right? So I think Geeks for Geeks itself has a lot of interview experiences written down, and I used to follow that. I used to follow this only. So So definitely go through that, because that will give you an exact understanding about how your various rounds would look like and what exactly you have to prepare. So let's say there are 4 rounds, and you see that 2 rounds are DSA based, and 2 rounds will be something system design based or project based, and these things you can prepare accordingly, right? You can prepare your prepare accordingly about that. Third is one thing that I found really useful is, if there is some round that is related to like project discussion or these things, definitely try to have a write up around what you want to say, right? Because the problem is that we tend to digress a lot from what we want to convey. So let's say you have done some project and you want to explain that. It's very easy to be explaining all the unnecessary things, and then you will use up your time, right? So try to have a write up about what are the points that you want to convey, what are the points that you want to explain them, and then actually sit for the interviews. Like do it a day before or 2 days before your interviews. And also maybe like if this is the first time you're prepared, like appearing for an interview, do some like speaking in front of the mirror and these things as well, because that will help you like boost up your confidence, because again, like this is the first time you'll be speaking in front of someone and explaining.
Correct. Correct. I think those were some really good tips, and it can really help the students clear their interviews. So, yes. Okay, so lastly, thank you so much, Soham, for coming to Geeks for Geeks and sharing about your experiences and what your views on this topic. I hope it solves a lot of questions that are there around various students on this particular topic, CP versus Dev. So yes, thank you so much for answering the questions, and it was a very healthy discussion.
No problem. And yeah, thanks for having me. I was glad to share my views. I'm not sure how much it will be helping everyone, but again, like if it helps, I'm really glad it helped you. So
Yes.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you. And thank you so much, guys, for joining. Like, the 78 to 80 students are still there consistently from the start. So, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next webinar. Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Also, before ending this webinar, I would like to tell you all about the course that is there and the discount coupon that we have. So, it will be popping here down the screen. So, we have flat 20% discount on our courses, and the link is also there in the description box. You can use the coupon code GWEEK20, which is also there popping out on the screen. You can use it and have flat 20% discount on all our courses. Yes, with this, I'll end the webinar. Bye.